Well, I mean, obviously, again, let's talk about Sheriff now Secretary Cabral, soon to be Secretary Cabral, and obviously, Steve, we were there at the inception
Sure
of
were, brother.
her in
That's
terms
right.
of her campaign.
That's right.
So, and we understood what needed to be done, and obviously, we got to take credit when it doesn't happen. We got to take credit when it does happen. So, I think that was a large measure of her success beside her own gravitas to be able to carry forth that position. So that has bode well in the sense of certain positions where heretofore we just weren't representative in. Again, we've seen some gains in terms of the city council. Obviously, as far as the governor and as far as the president. My position still remains the same. See, I'm one for drilling down. I want to be able to see a broad base. I want to see us not only go down vertically to be able to do it, I want us to go out horizontally and to drill down so we can begin to make some impact. Because notwithstanding what you say, I still say we still don't have political clout in the city. Now, I'm sure there'll be others who will come on the program who will disagree with me, and you know how I feel. We can agree to disagree, but let's not be disagreeable.
Right.
But I say that yes, we have made some strides, some gains since I've been here in 1967, and I, like you, have been trying to engage in that particular struggle. But the reality is, I want to see us be able to drill down. So some testament to me will be, what will the face of persons in government look like after some of the persons that we've talked about leave their office?
Right.
And that's going to be my test to see whether we have made some type of impact. Others do it. They make sure that they leave the vestiges of their administration within government. I want to see if we're able to accomplish the same thing.
Yeah. Now, you figure, I believe that Mayor Menino will run again, and if he runs, I believe that he will win. That probably will be, but you can never say, because we've said that before, his last term. After that, I think everybody jumps in the pond. I think there will be many folk of color that will go for the mayor's office, as will many women, as will many white individuals in the city go for that. When you have that many people in a campaign, do people then begin to cancel each other out? And how do you, if you're a candidate, if you're advising a candidate, what do they need to do to rise to the top of that field? Say if you've got a field of 10, 12 people.
Okay. Let me just say, I'm just going to try to back into answering that question to you, because my belief is this. I don't believe in just someone waking up in the morning and saying, hello, Martha, I think, or Max, I think I want to be a politician today. That's not the answer for me. My answer is, I look at the field and then I say, all right, Steve, we need to go speak to so-and-so and convince them that we want them to run for this office, and we're prepared to give them PMV, people, money, and votes. See, I'd rather come from that standpoint. So how one is going to rise above the field is if the one person who can build that, get the funds, and build an organization. Other than that, you're having a nice conversation with yourself that you want to run for the office. So yes, now in a larger field, that means that there are going to be less need in terms of the number of people that you're going to need for that, for that race. But nonetheless, I think the process is the same. And there are people that are sitting there right now in a back room, in somewhere throughout this city, making those moves right now, making those types of relationships. So I say to any of your listeners that are out there who want to run for political office, what they need to do is put together the Feast of Tompkins plan, which says you go out there, you get your people, you get your money, and then you build your organization, because ultimately it's a question of how many people you can get out there to vote.
But when you talk about going out to get the people and get the money, I think before that you have to have some kind of plan. I mean, if you come to me and you say, I want to run, I'd like you to help run, and I'd like you to pony up some cash, well then my first thing is, so where do you stand on the issues? And what are the issues of importance to you? And do they align with the issues of importance to me? So I would say to you, don't you have to have that game plan first before you actually approach people to get the people and the money and the votes, or is it the other way around in your way of seeing it?
Well, again, I've never seen an issue walk up and pull a lever. So my sense, I'm unconvinced in the campaigns that I've worked on, the people that I've worked with, and I've worked on a multiplicity of campaigns. It is a matter of, to me, I find it's the visceral aspects in terms of how do you feel about that particular person. Now, obviously, we have to be close on at least most of the issues.
Right.
I don't think there's anybody in life that I agree with on every issue. So I think that you're a matter of selling that for sure, but I think you're selling the personality. I can still recall, I can go back to certain campaigns, and I mean, I have to use the present mayor when we were running that campaign, and Bill Brett was running was an opponent in that particular race, and folks were saying, in terms of, about the mayor and that he can't speak straight, et cetera. So he turned that into an ad, and fine, he was successful, and as you can see, the fifth term?
Fifth or sixth, right.
It's obvious that
Exactly.
it was a matter. They said, "Oh, he's an urban mechanic," and so we put together the message. It's a matter of building the message around the individual. I feel that we can make anyone into a candidate, Steve. There are a number of us who know how to do it,
Right.
and we can do that. But what I find is, no one wants to seek advice. They believe they know it all. So I say, fine, you want to run? Run. If you had the backing. So my sense is it's a question. The cultivation you're talking about could occur.
Right.
But if people want to listen.
I find that interesting. You said no one wants to seek advice.
Yes.
Why is that? What brings about that dynamic?
Well, I'm not sure. I've just gotten away from trying to discern exactly what makes folks tick.
Right.
What I do is I just offer, if I choose to say, listen, I can be helpful to you. If you wish to take advantage of it, I'm more than happy in order to do that. I think that there are a lot of folks that just feel that they have all the answers. Or maybe they've picked a team that they feel comfortable with, that they can do it. And that's fine. The results will definitely give them a sense of whether they pick in terms of the white team. So I think that time will tell. But I think there is a process that we can do, and there are those of us who can be helpful to folks who are going to run for political office.
So we've got the senatorial race coming up shortly, followed by a gubernatorial race.
Yes.
Any names jump out, black or white, doesn't really matter the color of the stripe right now, that you think really will resonate with the electorate?
In terms of both of those, the senatorial, you're talking about the U.S. Senate.
Yes.
Yes. Well, the U.S.
Senate.
Senate. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, I mean, in terms of when I voted here in Roxbury, obviously, Congressman Capuano was my representative. I worked with him on a number of different areas, and certainly, I think that he would be a main contender. Obviously, he ran for, I believe, in
the last special.
That was a congressional, and I don't think he ran for, no, he didn't, yes, and he did.
Yeah,
That's right, he did run for the last
right,
special.
Right.
That's right. When Martha Coakley
When
ran.
Martha Coakley rose
Yeah,
to
but
the
I
top,
was thinking back to even from his U.S. rep, when he went for the
okay.
congressional seat way back when Flynn and all of them ran.
Right.
I think he would be a contender. I think my congressman now, Stevie Lynch, will probably step into the fore. They mentioned, Marty Meehan and others. I don't know. I mean, it'll be interesting to be able to see. I think that some will be deferential and will not enter a race if certain people get in. So I think that's a battle at a different level. My concern is that, fine, all across this country, we have no senators of color. In the U.S. Senate.
Well, we've got one.
Yeah.
The gentleman that was just tapped in South Carolina, Tim Scott.
Oh, that's right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right,
Okay.
right,
Yeah.
right. But he was tapped.
Right.
He didn't run for office, but he
That's
replaced DeMint, Jim DeMint.
That's right. In terms of and I stand corrected on that. So now in terms of the way we won, but again, the question is, will that result in his reelection? In his reelection, I mean, he's the interim.
Right.
And maybe that could occur here if Governor Patrick chooses. That could occur here. But I'm talking again. We haven't had anyone since Ed Brooks, Senator Brooks. In the Senate. So what I'm saying is that's something to look at. The demographics, not necessarily across this country, because the demographics as far as persons of color is the Latino community is in terms of the majority at the present time across this country. But nonetheless, that's something for us to look at. So it'll be interesting to see amongst the people that I've just mentioned who does step to the fore and wants to take that step. I don't know if one runs for the Senate whether they have to give up their congressional seat. I think not. I'm
Not in this special here.
In the special,
no, they don't. They don't.
But
so Lynch and Capuano, and they all actually can jump
Yes.
in the pond for this one.
Yes.
Because they don't have to give up their seat.
Okay, so that would be a deciding factor as to who, if they had to, would be concerned about whether, if they were not successful, whether they would lose the office that they currently hold.
We've only got a couple of more minutes, Joe. So talk to me about communities of color. And I'm going to ask you this. I'll preface it by saying this. I had a conversation with Mel King earlier this summer, and we were talking about politics, and we were talking about politics for folk of color. And his contention was that if folk of color, the collective, did not have an urban agenda, for lack of a better term, did not have points of view that they stood stridently on, then, how are they going to move themselves forward as a collective without really having, going back to what you're talking about having a plan and knowing what it is that you want to do? What would you say, what would be your advice to folk of color insofar as really gaining that kind of political acumen that they need to be very intimately involved in moving this Commonwealth forward?
Well, I think that one of the things is going back to what I said, there's some folks with sage advice out there like former State Representative Mel King, who have the insight and could provide that type of ballast, that type of understanding for some of these younger folks who want to,
But I'm asking you, I want to know, what is your sage advice?
Well, in terms of my advice is this: first and foremost, we have to look at education, we got to look at crime, we have to look at housing, we got to look at, we're in the period of time just passing through Kwanzaa. When you start talking about Ujima, Umoja, Kukachakalia, we have to apply all of these principles, because right now we have a community and we have situations in our communities of color where folks are just running amok. And my concern is when we start looking at the educational system, which is coddling kids as opposed to educating them, when we have a situation where people are able to now, the new welfare is disability. It's not. It's a matter of, again, capturing people in a lifestyle of dependency. We're talking about situations where folks are looking at opportunities for work, and is non-existent. We're not building in terms of the whole concept of building businesses. So we have to get busy in terms of going back to at least when I grew up, where community took care of community. We didn't have a whole lot, but within the community, folks were able to provide for their families. They taught respect. They taught all of these things which were, you got tapped, and this whole thing that timeout. The only timeout I know about is resting my arm. I mean, that's the only timeout I know. So, but the reality is, we have to get back to the basics. We got to get back to respect. The young folks will not get on the buses and the trains and be using the type of language and telling the types of stories that they tell in front of adults. We have to, in terms of where a gentleman will get up and give a woman a seat, we have to talk about keeping our neighborhoods clean. I remember the days when I was growing up in New York, I had to shovel down 10 houses and not get paid. This was just because Miss Simpson lived down here.
Right.
When I was shoveling, I had to shovel.
Right.
I didn't have to wait for a street sweeper to come by to sweep in front of our house when we did it. So we have to take some responsibility. Now we have it as people don't even know people who live in the same building that they live in. So you can't tell me that there's a sense of community when we have a situation where folks don't care about, if they see young people doing things, they aren't chastised, they aren't addressed, they aren't corrected. So I think it starts, we have to go back to the basics. I know folks are talking this pie in the sky, and they start using things that this community. I contend that in terms of, we have to go back to the basics. We have things we need to do.
All right, Joseph, listen, I think we're out of time here. It was a blast having you here. Actually, we've got to get you back.
Well,
folks, I've known Joe for quite some time, and when you talk about going back to the beginning of Sheriff Cabral's tenure as the sheriff, one day I'll tell you a story that Joe told me about making sure that we did the right thing and making sure that the candidate was protected and really being able to be all that she could be so that she could be all that she can do for you. And that turned out amazingly well for the 10 years that she was in office. And we wish her well as she moves on to the Secretariat of Public Safety for the Commonwealth. But back to you, sir. Thanks for coming on.
As always, thank you.
Right.
I'll accept the invitation from you whenever, wherever.
Yeah, no, we'll have you back real soon, okay?